AITA for feeling like my sister overstepped by bringing my kids to a music festival without asking. So, here's the situation. I, 32F, have two kids, an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. My sister, Emily, 29F, has always been a bit impulsive, but I generally try to let slide. I'm a single mom, and while I try to be pretty organized with my kids' schedules and activities, sometimes it gets overwhelming. My sister has always offered to help, and I've accepted a few times in the past, usually for short periods or simple errands, like babysitting while I run to the grocery store. A couple of weeks ago, Emily bought tickets to this massive music festival in our city. She's a huge fan of live music, and she's been talking about this festival for months. Normally, I wouldn't consider letting my kids go, but she insisted she wanted to take them along, claiming it would be fun and safe since it's a daytime event and she'd be supervising them the whole time. She told me it would give me a chance to relax, maybe get some much-needed downtime. I hesitated at first because I wasn't comfortable with the idea of my 5-year-old being in a crowded festival environment, but Emily was extremely persistent. She kept saying she would make it kid-friendly and that she's really good with kids. Eventually, I reluctantly agreed, figuring she knew them well and that she wouldn't do anything reckless. The day of the festival, Emily came over around 9 a.m. to pick up the kids. She had backpacks ready for both of them, packed with snacks, sunscreen, water, and even small folding chairs. She seemed really organized, and for a moment, I felt guilty for doubting her. She told me she'd be back around 7 p.m. to drop them off, and that I should enjoy my day however I wanted. I wave her off, try not to worry too much. Around noon, I started getting texts from Emily. The first one was a picture of the kids near the main stage, looking excited. I was relieved at first, but then the text started coming faster. She was sending videos of my kids dancing near loudspeakers, mingling with older teens and adults, and even holding drinks that looked like soda but had no labels visible. I asked her repeatedly if the kids were safe and if the environment was okay for them, and she assured me they were having the time of their lives, and that the festival organizers had kid zones and security everywhere. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't shake this gnawing feeling. I texted her to see if she'd maybe taken them to any of the kid-friendly zones she mentioned. That's when she dropped a bomb. She told me she had bought VIP passes so they could go backstage and meet some of the performers. She said the experience was once in a lifetime and that she knew they'd never forget it. I froze. Backstage meant crowds of adults, loud music, and limited supervision options. I asked her why she hadn't mentioned this beforehand, and her response was, "I didn't want to worry you. You said you trusted me, so I figured you'd be happy they were getting an incredible experience." At this point, I started panicking. I called the festival security number, hoping to confirm they were actually safe. They confirmed that Emily and the kids were on site, but they didn't provide detailed supervision info, which made me even more anxious. I kept texting Emily, asking her to keep them in the kid zones, but she brushed it off, saying, "Relax, they're fine. They're having so much fun, and you'll love the stories they bring home." When Emily finally returned around 8 p.m., the kids were buzzing with excitement. They were talking nonstop about the performers they'd seen, the backstage pass, and all the snacks and games they had experienced. At first, I tried to mask my stress with a smile, but then I asked Emily why she didn't consult me about going backstage or putting them in situations with larger crowds. She laughed it off and said, "Honestly, I thought you'd thank me. This is an experience most adults never get, and you let me take them. I just wanted to make it special for them." I tried to explain to her that it wasn't about the opportunity itself, but about the principle of making decisions regarding my kids without my consent. Emily got defensive and said I was overreacting, that kids need to have fun, and sometimes adults worry too much. She said she gave them the best day of their lives, and that if I had trusted her more, I wouldn't be upset. Since that day, I've been stewing about it. I keep thinking about the potential risks. Loud music, large crowds, possibility of getting lost, unknown adults backstage, and even the fact that I had no control over food, hydration, or safety. I love that the kids had fun, but I can't shake this feeling that my sister crossed a boundary. My friends and coworkers are split. Some say I'm being too controlling, that Emily gave them a memorable experience. Others say that no matter how fun it was, she shouldn't have taken them into risky situations without asking, and I was right to feel upset. I haven't confronted Emily directly since then. We had a short argument over text where she said I should get over it, but it's hard for me to just ignore what happened. I'm debating whether to set stricter boundaries with her about my kids in the future, or if I'm being unreasonable and should just appreciate the fun memory. So, AITA for feeling upset that my sister took my kids to a crowded music festival and gave them backstage access without asking me first, even though they had an amazing time. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my brother move back into our childhood home, even though he helped renovate it. And now the rest of the family thinks I'm selfish? AITA here. I, 38F, have been dealing with a situation involving my brother, Andrew, 36M, that has created a massive rift in my family. I need to figure out if I really am the asshole or if I'm justified in my decision. Here's some background. Andrew and I grew up in a small house in the suburbs that belonged to our parents. A few years ago, our parents retired and moved to another state, leaving the house to both of us. At the time, Andrew and I agreed to split ownership. I live in the house full-time, while Andrew moved into a nearby city for work. A year after our parents left, Andrew offered to help me renovate the house, which was much needed. He's a skilled contractor, and I trusted his expertise. Andrew was very hands-on during the renovation. He spent weekends and evenings for months working on plumbing, electrical systems, and finishing work in the kitchen and bathrooms. He also bought some materials and gave me advice on furniture, paint colors, and flooring. I genuinely appreciated his help because, without him, the house would have been far less functional and aesthetically pleasing. Once the renovation was complete, Andrew started hinting that he wanted to move back into the house permanently, or at least spend extended periods there. He said it would be convenient for him financially, and that living together again could help us split bills and maintain the property. I was completely unprepared for this. I had envisioned him visiting occasionally, but I never imagined full-time cohabitation. I told him I wasn't comfortable with the idea. The house is my home, and I value my privacy. I explained that while I was grateful for his help with the renovation, that does not mean he has the right to move in permanently. Andrew argued that since he helped make the house perfect, he should have a say in how it's used and claimed that my refusal was unfair. He said he would only stay a few nights a week at first, but it was clear to me that this would eventually turn into full-time living. When I refused, Andrew went to our parents and other family members to complain. He framed it as me being ungrateful and controlling, and he implied that I was kicking him out after he contributed so much to the house. Our parents were sympathetic to him and started pressuring me to reconsider. They said families should stick together, and since he helped make the house what it is, I should allow him to live there. It didn't stop there. Other family members started weighing in. My cousins and aunts suggested that I should let him move in, calling me selfish and inflexible. They said that I was prioritizing my comfort over family loyalty. I tried to explain that my concern isn't about gratitude or money. It's about living arrangements, privacy, and boundaries. I also reminded everyone that I've never asked him to pay for the renovation and that he was welcome to visit anytime, but permanent cohabitation would disrupt my daily life. Andrew became increasingly pushy. He started showing up unannounced under the guise of checking on the progress or helping with maintenance. He criticized small things, like how I organized the kitchen or arranged furniture, and made comments about how the house isn't really his if he can't live in it. I tried to remain polite but firm, reiterating that the house is my home and that I need boundaries. The tension has escalated to the point that family gatherings are awkward. Everyone treats me like the villain for denying him what they consider a reasonable request. I feel like my intentions are being misrepresented. I'm not trying to punish Andrew or refuse gratitude. I simply want my home to remain my home. I've offered compromises like him visiting for weekends, helping maintain the house, or even contributing to bills if he stays temporarily, but nothing seems acceptable to him or the rest of the family. My spouse, Tom, 40M, supports me, but even has had to deal with my family criticizing us both for not being flexible or not prioritizing family. It's exhausting, and I feel like no matter what I do, I'm being painted as the bad guy. I've tried explaining that gratitude does not equal ownership or the right to move in permanently, but it seems like no one wants to listen. I've considered a formal agreement to allow him to rent part of the house temporarily, but Andrew insists on moving in without any terms. I'm worried that allowing him in would create constant conflict, blur boundaries, and eventually make me feel like a guest in my own home. I also fear that if I give in, it will set a precedent for other family members to make similar demands. Despite all of this, I still value my relationship with Andrew. I want him to be part of my life and to feel appreciated for his contributions, but I can't compromise on my personal boundaries. I've tried to be reasonable, flexible in other ways, and even suggested family counseling to mediate the situation, but Andrew and the rest of the family have dismissed these options. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move back into our childhood home permanently, even though he helped renovate it, knowing that it has caused tension with him and other family members. I feel like I'm being accused of selfishness simply for protecting my home and boundaries, and I'm struggling with whether I'm truly in the wrong here. AITA for refusing to let my husband's family control our wedding plans, even though they threatened to boycott it. I, 31F, have been with my husband, Tom, 34M, for 7 years. We've been married for 3, but recently we decided to host a vow renewal ceremony for our immediate family and closest friends since our original wedding was small and rushed due to financial constraints. From the start, I wanted the ceremony to reflect us as a couple, while Tom was trying to balance his desires with keeping his family happy. This has spiraled into what feels like a full-blown conflict that I can't seem to navigate without people getting upset. Tom's family has always been very traditional. His parents, Karen, 58F, and Philip, 60M, expect formal, large-scale gatherings with strict adherence to their cultural traditions. For context, our original wedding was a casual event with around 30 guests, mostly friends and distant family. His parents didn't like it much, but we convinced them to attend. For this vow renewal, I envisioned an intimate garden ceremony with about 40 guests, modern decor, and a simple reception with light catering. Tom agreed with my vision initially, but when his family found out, they were furious. The first issue arose with the venue. I chose a small botanical garden that holds about 50 people. Karen immediately said it was too small for a proper family celebration and insisted that we rent a banquet hall instead, one that seats over 200. I reminded her that we wanted something intimate and that renting a larger space would completely change the atmosphere and increase costs exponentially. She accused me of being selfish and disrespecting family. Tom tried to mediate, but eventually he admitted that he felt torn because he didn't want to disappoint his parents. Then came a guest list. I had limited it to close friends and family we see regularly. Karen and Philip insisted that all of Tom's extended cousins, aunts, and uncles be invited, totaling nearly 80 more people. I explained that this would double the size of the event and that we couldn't afford it, and that our goal was to have a personal, meaningful ceremony rather than a full-scale wedding reception. They said that was unacceptable and that family comes first. The next issue was the ceremony itself. I planned a short, modern ceremony with personal vows we wrote ourselves, followed by a casual dinner and cake. Karen demanded we include traditional rituals and that we follow a script she provided. She said the ceremony was incomplete without these traditions and accused me of trying to erase their culture. Tom felt uncomfortable but suggested we could incorporate 1 or 2 small rituals. Karen rejected that compromise and said she would not attend if the ceremony didn't follow her exact plan. Things escalated when I mentioned catering. I chose a local farm-to-table restaurant that specializes in fresh, seasonal menus. Karen objected because she felt we should have a formal multi-course dinner, even though she admitted she didn't like farm-to-table food. She also complained about the flowers, saying that peonies and wildflowers were childish, and that only roses and lilies were acceptable. She threatened that if we didn't do everything her way, she would not attend, and she hinted that her absence would reflect poorly on us with the rest of the family. Tom tried to reason with her multiple times. He explained that the ceremony is about us as a couple and that his parents' preferences cannot dictate the entire event. Karen and Philip called him disrespectful and claimed he was abandoning family values, saying the ceremony was inappropriate and shameful, which caused tension among family members. Some relatives asked me if I was serious about excluding the traditional elements, and I confirmed that we were. I also explained that the ceremony was small and personal, not a public event meant to please everyone. The final straw came when Karen threatened to boycott the entire event unless her family's demands were met. She said that if she didn't get her way, she would make sure the whole family knows, and that our relationship with her and other relatives would suffer permanently. I felt blindsided because I had tried to include Tom's family wherever possible without compromising our vision. I also realized that if I gave in, it wouldn't stop there. They would continue to dictate every future event in our lives. Tom supported me fully after that discussion. He agreed that we should stick to our plan and that our parents' refusal to attend should not dictate our happiness. Some relatives have expressed disappointment, but most understand that this is our day. Tom and I have compromised on small details, like including a brief traditional toast and one cultural ritual, but the core of the ceremony is exactly what we envisioned. Karen and Philip are still upset and have said they will attend reluctantly, but they refuse to participate actively in planning. I feel guilty because I know they are upset, and I don't want to create lasting resentment, but I also feel justified in protecting our wedding from being completely hijacked. Some friends have said I'm right to set boundaries, while others think I'm overreacting by not bending to family traditions. Tom feels relieved that we are sticking to our plan, but I worry about the tension that will linger at the event. AITA for refusing to let my husband's parents control our vow renewal ceremony and insisting that we stick to our original plan even though they threatened not to attend. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's perfect wedding after years of feeling undervalued. AITA for deciding not to attend my sister's wedding, even though it has caused a huge family rift. I feel like I need to get this off my chest because no one in my family seems to understand my perspective and everyone is framing me as the villain. I, 28F, have a younger sister, 25F, who has always been the golden child in our family. Growing up, it seemed like no matter what I did, it was never enough for my parents, while my sister got praise for even the smallest accomplishments. For example, when I won a scholarship in high school, my parents congratulated me politely but quickly shifted the focus to my sister's ballet recital. If I received good grades, my sister's extracurriculars somehow took center stage. Even now, years later, my parents bring up her achievements in ways that make me feel invisible. I've tried addressing this with my family over the years. I've told my parents that their favoritism hurts me and that I feel like my accomplishments are always overshadowed. I've expressed to my sister that I sometimes feel like the family loves her more than me. Unfortunately, my concerns have always been brushed off. My parents say they never meant to hurt me and that I should be more grateful for what I have. My sister usually laughs it off and tells me I'm overthinking, insisting that she loves me just as much. Fast forward to now, my sister got engaged last year, and she has been planning her wedding with what she calls her dream wedding checklist. The problem is, it's become painfully clear that the wedding is being designed to highlight her and her life while completely ignoring mine or anyone else who doesn't fit her vision. Invitations to family and friends were selective, and she's even decided on wedding favors, table assignments, and seating arrangements without consulting anyone. Celebrate her as if everything were fine. I emphasize that this wasn't about her wedding itself. It was about years of feeling undervalued and invisible. Unsurprisingly, my family reacted very negatively. My sister cried and called me selfish, saying I'm ruining her dream and that I'm punishing her for things that happened years ago. My parents accuse me of holding grudges and being dramatic, insisting that family should be unconditional and that my presence is expected regardless of my feelings. Extended family has also chimed in, saying I'm being unreasonable and that I should just get over it for the sake of peace. I understand that weddings are a big deal, and I know my absence will disappoint many people, but I also feel like I've reached a point where self-preservation matters more than social expectations. I don't want to force myself into a situation where I will be quietly suffering while everyone praises my sister. I've even considered attending the wedding, but sitting quietly in the back. But even that feels hollow and humiliating because the main point of my attendance would be performative support rather than genuine celebration. I've been feeling a mix of relief and guilt since making this decision. On one hand, I feel like I'm finally setting boundaries and acknowledging my own worth. On the other hand, I can't help but feel like I'm letting down my family or causing a permanent rift. My friends are supportive, saying I have every right to protect my mental health, but my family sees it as betrayal. I'm posting here because I want an outside perspective. I know this is a long story, but it's a complicated situation with years of history behind it. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding, knowing it will hurt her feelings and upset my parents, even though I've tried to explain my reasons. I'm also curious if there's a better way to navigate this situation without completely sacrificing my self-respect. I want to support my sister, but it seems like the current dynamic doesn't allow me to do so without feeling invisible and disrespected. If you've read this far, thank you for considering my perspective. I genuinely want to understand whether I'm being unreasonable or if my decision is justified given the family history and current circumstances. AITA for refusing to pay for my partner's friend's lavish birthday party, even though my partner insists it's expected, and now our relationship is strained? AITA here. I, 32F, have been in a relationship with my partner, Ryan, 34M, for 5 years. We live together, split bills, and generally maintain a healthy partnership. Recently, however, a situation involving his friend group and a birthday party has caused serious tension between us, and I'm questioning whether I'm in the wrong or if Ryan is being unreasonable. Ryan has a friend, Max, 33M, who is known for hosting extremely lavish events. For his upcoming birthday, Max decided to rent a banquet hall, hire a live band, and cater gourmet food for about 70 people. He made it clear that everyone attending would be expected to contribute to the cost, which he estimated at roughly $200 per person. He is the type of person who doesn't like being told no, and his social circle tends to follow his lead without question. A few weeks ago, Ryan mentioned that he and I would need to contribute $200 for Max's birthday party. I was taken aback. While I understand contributing to events occasionally, $200 for a single party is a significant expense for us. Between rent, utilities, groceries, and other obligations, it would mean cutting corners elsewhere. I tried to explain this to Ryan, but he insisted that it's expected and that I should be happy to participate because Max has been generous to our friend group in the past. He framed it as a social obligation that we cannot ignore if we want to maintain our relationships with everyone involved. I asked Ryan if we could compromise by attending, but contributing a smaller amount, or perhaps sending a gift instead of paying for the event, but he was firm. He argued that if we didn't pay the full amount, it would be disrespectful and might cause friction within his friend group. He also said that Max deserves this and that people in his circle generally expect everyone to participate fully. I tried to explain that our financial situation is different from some of our friends, and while I want to support Max and our social circle, I cannot justify spending $200 on a party that isn't essential. Ryan's response was that I was selfish and not supportive of friendships, which made me feel guilty and attacked. I reminded him that I contribute to social events regularly and that attending doesn't mean we have to overspend beyond our means, but he disagreed. The argument escalated over several days. Ryan accused me of valuing money over people and suggested that our relationship might suffer if I refused. He said that friendships require sacrifices and implied that I'm unwilling to make them. I try to point out that I'm willing to help in other ways, volunteering time to help set up the party, assisting with decorations, or preparing a thoughtful gift, but he dismissed these suggestions, insisting that money is the primary indicator of support. I also discussed this with a few friends outside the group, and their opinions were mixed. Some said I should contribute if I can to maintain relationships and avoid conflict, while others agreed that $200 for a single party is excessive and that my financial boundaries are reasonable. My parents told me that it's not my obligation to fund someone else's extravagant lifestyle, which reassured me, but didn't resolve the tension with Ryan. Ryan has been increasingly distant since I refused to commit to the full payment. He avoids discussing future plans, makes passive-aggressive comments about generosity and commitment, and sometimes brings up Max and the party in a way that feels like emotional pressure. I feel like I'm being punished for setting a financial boundary that I believe is responsible and necessary. The situation became even more complicated when Ryan suggested that if I don't pay, we might skip the party entirely. I said that I was fine attending without contributing $200, but he argued that showing up without paying would be disrespectful. I feel like I'm caught between maintaining my financial independence and maintaining harmony in his social circle, and no solution seems acceptable to him. I've considered ways to compromise further, like pooling a smaller amount from both of us and giving Max a personalized gift that shows thoughtfulness without the monetary strain, but Ryan refuses to negotiate. He insists that social norms within his group dictate full contribution, and anything less would be embarrassing or disrespectful. I also worry about the long-term implications. If I give in now, I fear it will set a precedent for future demands and continue to create tension in our relationship. I want to be supportive of Ryan's friendships, but I also need to maintain financial stability and fairness within our household. So, AITA for refusing to pay $200 for my partner's friend's birthday party, even though my partner insists it is expected and necessary for maintaining friendships. I feel like I'm being responsible and trying to find alternative ways to participate, but the conflict has created ongoing tension in our relationship and is making me question whether I'm truly at fault. AITA for refusing to lend my best friend a large sum of money after she asked me to cover her for life. I, 30F, have been best friends with Emma, 29F, since college. We were inseparable back then, and even now, we talk almost every day. Over the years, I've tried to be supportive in every way I could, helping her move, giving advice on relationships, and occasionally lending small amounts of money when she was in a bind. However, our friendship has recently hit a breaking point, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong. Emma has always struggled financially. She has had a few jobs, but none have lasted long. She rents an apartment in a trendy part of the city that is way beyond her means, and she's accumulated significant credit card debt. I've tried to help by suggesting budgeting apps, cheaper living options, and ways to increase income, but she rarely follows through. I understand life can be unpredictable, but over time, I've realized she's often relied on others to cover for her rather than taking consistent responsibility for herself. 2 months ago, Emma called me hysterical. She said she had overdrawn her account, missed rent, and was at risk of being evicted. She asked if I could lend her $10,000, assuring me she would pay it back within a year. I was shocked. $10,000 is a substantial amount for me, and while I have savings, lending that much to someone who has repeatedly mismanaged money felt risky. I asked if she had any other options, like family support, loans, or financial assistance programs, but she insisted none of that was possible and that I was the only person who could help her. I tried to reason with her. I said I could help in smaller ways, covering 1 month's rent or helping her find a roommate or a cheaper apartment, but I could not lend her $10,000. I explained that it wasn't personal, but it was too much of a financial risk, and I had my own expenses and obligations. She reacted extremely negatively. She started crying and yelling, accusing me of not caring about her and claiming that I was abandoning her in her time of need. She said things like, "If you were really my friend, you'd do this," and "I can't believe you're choosing money over me." Things got worse over the next few days. Emma sent multiple messages, calling me selfish and heartless. She also started telling mutual friends that I refused to help her when she was in crisis, and some of them began asking me why I wouldn't lend her the money. I tried to explain calmly that I could not financially risk that amount, and that smaller, more sustainable help was the only responsible way I could support her. Some friends sided with me, but others thought I was overreacting and should just help her out because we are best friends. Emma then escalated further. She said that if I didn't lend her the money, she would have to move back in with her parents, which she described as humiliating, and that she might lose our friendship permanently. She also implied that she might stop talking to me entirely, framing it as a consequence of my lack of support. I felt manipulated and stressed. I reached out to her, trying to explain that I wasn't abandoning her. I was still willing to help find solutions, like connecting her with affordable apartments, budgeting resources, and even helping her negotiate with her landlord, but that lending $10,000 was not something I could do. Over time, the situation has created tension in my social circle. Emma barely talks to me now unless she needs something, and when we do interact, there's a noticeable coldness. Mutual friends have expressed disappointment, saying I could have been more generous. I feel hurt because I've supported Emma in so many ways over the years, yet she seems to expect me to put her financial needs above all else, disregarding my own stability. I also feel angry because she continues to make me feel guilty for saying no and frames my refusal as a moral failing rather than a reasonable boundary. I've tried to reflect on my actions. I feel that setting limits is healthy, especially when it comes to finances. I also worry that if I had given her the money, it wouldn't solve her problems long-term and could enable her pattern of dependency. At the same time, I feel guilty because she is my best friend, and I know she is genuinely struggling. I've considered offering a payment plan or partial assistance, but she refuses to compromise, insisting that only the full amount will do. I've also thought about the friendship itself. Over the years, I've invested time, energy, and emotional support into her well-being, often prioritizing her needs over my own. Now, when it comes to money, she treats the situation as a make-or-break test of our friendship. I feel exhausted by the pressure and am questioning whether this friendship is healthy if she cannot accept boundaries, especially around something as significant as $10,000. I don't want to lose her as a friend, but I also know that giving her the money would likely cause resentment or further issues down the line. I've made it clear that I care about her and want to help in ways that are sustainable, but she continues to demand something I cannot responsibly provide. I've also talked to some financial advisors and friends who say I was right to refuse, but part of me still feels like I could have done more. AITA for refusing to lend my best friend $10,000. Even though she claims she has no other options and has framed my refusal as a betrayal? AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding after she canceled hers last year? I, 32F, live in a mid-sized city and have a house that I inherited from my parents about 5 years ago. It's not huge or luxurious, but it's a decent 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home with a nice backyard and a modest patio. I've always taken pride in keeping it clean and well-maintained. My younger sister, Emily, 29F, has always had a dramatic streak and a tendency to expect others to bend to her needs, but I've generally gone along with things because I love her and wanted to support her. Last year, Emily was engaged to her fiancé, Tom, 33M, and they started planning a wedding. The problem is, she had very specific ideas that required a large venue, expensive decor, and what she considered Instagram-worthy photos at every possible moment. She approached me about hosting the wedding at my house, which I initially declined because my backyard and house just couldn't accommodate the number of people she wanted. She didn't take no for an answer and started pressuring me, saying things like, "It's just a backyard. You can move some furniture and it'll be fine, and everyone loves a cozy, intimate wedding at a personal home." I try to be polite but firm in saying no, citing the size, parking issues, and lack of facilities for catering. Eventually, she decided to book a local event hall instead, which she paid for in full. The wedding was planned, deposits were made, and everyone was preparing to celebrate. Then came the unexpected. About 3 months before the wedding, Emily broke up with Tom. She said they had different priorities and that she wasn't happy with the engagement. Naturally, I was sad for her, but I thought it was her decision, and I tried to be supportive. She was devastated, and in the days following, she messaged me nonstop about how she still wanted a wedding, but with a new fiancé she hadn't even met yet. She made comments about how she had ruined her big day and that maybe next year I could host her wedding instead. I tried to stay neutral, but I was hesitant because planning a wedding in my house on short notice sounded like a logistical nightmare. Fast forward 6 months. Emily met someone new, Michael, 31M, and things moved very quickly. They were engaged within 3 months of meeting, and suddenly she started asking me about using my house again. She claimed she had learned from last time, and that this wedding would be small, elegant, and manageable. I reminded her of the previous year and my concerns about space, parking, and cleaning up afterward. I suggested she consider a venue designed for weddings or even a local park. She dismissed my suggestions, saying that those are soulless and that my house has so much character. She also mentioned that our parents would be thrilled if I hosted it, and that I should think about family togetherness. I started to feel pressured, but I still tried to be diplomatic. Then, a week ago, she came over unannounced with Michael to see the space and start planning. She brought a folder of Pinterest boards, color schemes, and tablescapes. She immediately began moving things around in my living room, telling me that the couch had to go here, the chairs there, and that my side table was an eyesore for wedding photos. I tried to stay calm and asked her to stop moving my furniture. She brushed it off, saying I was being dramatic and that she was just visualizing the wedding. I felt uncomfortable, as she was now crossing boundaries in my own home. At this point, I told her very clearly that I could not host her wedding. I explained that my house isn't suitable for large gatherings, that I have commitments at work, and that I can't take on the stress of planning, hosting, and cleaning up for an event of that scale. I also mentioned that her previous wedding plans didn't go through at my house for a reason, and that my decision wasn't personal. I offered to help in other ways, like helping her find a venue, suggesting caterers, or helping with DIY decorations, but hosting was off the table. Her reaction was intense. She yelled, called me selfish, and accused me of trying to ruin her happiness like last time. She said I was punishing her for things that aren't my fault, and that I was always controlling and never supportive. Michael, who had been quiet until then, tried to mediate and told her to calm down, but she said that he doesn't understand family dynamics and stormed out. I texted her later to reiterate that I wasn't refusing to support her wedding entirely, just that hosting at my home wasn't possible. I suggested that she consider venues that could handle 50 to 75 people comfortably, as she claimed she wanted a small wedding this time. She hasn't responded, but I've heard through mutual friends that she's been posting on social media about family betrayal and how I'm the worst sister ever for not letting her use my house. Our parents are caught in the middle. They understand my reasons, but they are worried that this could cause a permanent rift between us. Some friends have said I'm overreacting, that it would be fun to host a wedding, and that I should put family first. Others say that Emily is being unreasonable and that my boundaries are valid. I genuinely want to support her happiness, but I also want to preserve my space and mental health. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding after she canceled hers last year, and is now pressuring me again. I feel like it's my property, my life, and my right to say no. But the backlash has been intense, and I'm questioning if I could be handling this more gracefully. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after finding out about his fiance's past. I, 28F, have always been close to my older brother, Jake, 32M. Growing up, we were inseparable. He was protective, and I admired him for a lot of things, his work ethic, his sense of humor, and the way he cared for our family. However, over the past few years, our relationship has become more strained, mostly because of his personal choices and the people he chooses to surround himself with. I never expected it to come to a point where I had to decide whether to attend his wedding or not. About a year ago, Jake met a woman named Melanie, 30F, through work. At first, I didn't think much of her because I hadn't met her. From what Jake described, she was amazing, funny, and really ambitious, and he seemed genuinely happy. My parents adored her and started talking about wedding plans almost immediately after he introduced her to the family. I tried to be supportive, even though something about the speed of the relationship made me slightly uncomfortable. I finally met Melanie at a small family dinner about 6 months ago. She was polite, friendly, and seemed to get along with everyone. I didn't see any red flags at that point, so I tried to let go of my reservations. But about 2 months ago, while helping my friend who works in event planning, I overheard a conversation that made me pause. Melanie had apparently had a reputation at her previous workplace for manipulative behavior and had left under contentious circumstances. I didn't want to jump to conclusions based on hearsay, but the details I overheard were concerning. She had reportedly sabotaged colleagues' projects and even taken credit for work she hadn't done. I considered keeping it to myself, but as time passed, I began to notice subtle things in her behavior when she visited my family. She had a habit of twisting conversations to make herself appear as the victim, would gossip about family members when she thought no one was listening, and often try to make decisions on behalf of my parents, which I found intrusive. I felt uneasy, but I wasn't ready to confront Jake yet because I didn't have concrete proof. The breaking point came a month ago. Jake invited me to a weekend getaway with Melanie to celebrate our bond as siblings, and I went reluctantly. During the trip, Melanie somehow discovered an old family secret that my parents had shared with me in confidence. By the time Jake and I realized, she had already shared it with a few extended family members and friends. The fallout was intense. My parents were furious, and I felt betrayed, not just by Melanie, but also by Jake for not setting boundaries. When I confronted him, he brushed it off, saying, "People make mistakes, and Melanie didn't mean to hurt anyone. Can't you just let it go?" I couldn't understand how he could defend her after what she did. After this incident, I tried to maintain a polite distance from her, but things escalated further when Jake announced that he and Melanie were engaged and that the wedding would be in 4 months. I felt conflicted. On one hand, he is my brother, and I wanted to be there for him. On the other hand, the thought of celebrating a union with someone I now consider manipulative and untrustworthy made me extremely uncomfortable. I brought my concerns to my parents, and they were divided. My mom, wanting peace, said I should attend the wedding to support my brother, regardless of Melanie's past. My dad, on the other hand, expressed that he shared my reservations but didn't want to confront Jake directly because he was worried about family tension. I also talked to some of my close friends for perspective. Most agreed that while I couldn't control my brother's choices, it was reasonable for me to decide not to attend based on my feelings. 2 weeks ago, I finally told Jake that I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I explained my reasons. I couldn't in good conscience celebrate someone I felt had repeatedly violated trust and boundaries, and I didn't feel comfortable being part of the event. I tried to frame it in terms of my feelings rather than attacking Melanie personally, but Jake immediately got defensive. He accused me of being judgmental, disrespectful, and even trying to ruin his happiness. He told our parents, who then confronted me, asking me to reconsider, saying that my absence would be a huge statement and could create lasting family tension. I feel stuck. I know my brother is hurt and angry, and part of me regrets causing that pain. At the same time, I feel like attending the wedding would betray my own values and force me into a situation that I find morally and emotionally compromising. I've offered to meet with Jake privately before or after the wedding to maintain a relationship, but he seems unwilling to separate me from Melanie in this situation. Since then, several relatives have reached out to pressure me into attending, and social media has made things even more awkward because the wedding planning updates are everywhere. I understand that some people might think I'm overreacting or being unfair to my brother, but from my perspective, this is about protecting my boundaries and avoiding participating in something I fundamentally disagree with. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of concerns about his fiancée and her past behavior? Or am I being too judgmental and risking my relationship with him over something I can't control? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for confronting my sister at her wedding over a long-standing family feud. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emily, 35F. Growing up, We were extremely close until our teenage years, when a combination of personality clashes, jealousy, and some unresolved family issues drove a wedge between us. Our parents were emotionally distant and often pitted us against each other without realizing it. My resentment built over time, and Emily was always dismissive of my feelings, even when I tried to talk things through. Over the years, we maintained minimal contact, mostly polite birthday or holiday messages, but the tension was always there. About a year ago, Emily announced she was engaged to Mark, 36M. I was genuinely happy for her at first, but the thought of having to attend her wedding brought back all the old feelings of hurt and resentment. I debated whether I should go or not. On one hand, I wanted to support her, but on the other hand, I feared the unresolved tension would explode in front of everyone. Ultimately, I decided to attend because my mother was insistent, saying it was the right thing to do, and I didn't want my absence to make things worse. The wedding day arrived, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. I greeted relatives I hadn't seen in years and tried to keep a polite distance from Emily. During the ceremony, I noticed Emily glaring at me occasionally, which made me increasingly nervous. I assumed it was residual tension or maybe stress from the wedding day. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, Mark's family and friends were mingling, and I tried to engage in casual conversation to keep the atmosphere light. Emily, however, kept avoiding me. The tipping point came during the speeches. Emily's maid of honor gave a glowing speech that, in my opinion, glossed over some serious issues in our family that I felt deserved acknowledgement. I had been holding back my emotions for a long time, but at that moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to say something. I approached Emily during a brief lull in the reception and asked her if we could step outside for a moment to talk. She hesitated, but followed me to a quiet area near the garden. I told her that I had carried hurt and resentment for years because I felt she didn't respect my feelings, and that it hurt seeing her act like everything was perfect. I mentioned specific incidents from our past, times she had belittled me, times she had excluded me, and times she had ignored my attempts at reconciliation. I didn't raise my voice, but I was emotional and firm. I expected her to either apologize or at least acknowledge what I was saying, but instead, she became defensive and accused me of trying to ruin her wedding. She said that I was being selfish and that I should just let go of the past and enjoy her special day. At that point, I felt cornered. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to ruin anything, that I just wanted her to acknowledge that her behavior had affected me deeply. She shouted back that the wedding was not the place for a family therapy session and that I was embarrassing her. I reminded her that our relationship had been strained for years and that ignoring it didn't make it disappear. Things escalated to the point where we were both crying, and eventually Emily stormed back into the reception hall, leaving me standing there awkwardly. Afterwards, several family members came over, some expressing sympathy, others disappointment. My mother was visibly upset and told me that I had ruined her daughter's big day. Mark's family seemed uncomfortable but didn't say much. Emily's friends whispered behind their hands, and some openly avoided me for the rest of the night. I stayed until the end, mostly keeping to myself, but the tension was palpable. Since the wedding, Emily has not contacted me except for a brief, curt text saying, "I hope you can find a way to move on." Our parents have been torn, trying to mediate, but clearly siding with Emily about the wedding incident. I feel like I was standing up for myself, but I also recognize that the timing was awful and that my actions overshadowed what should have been her happy day. I keep asking myself if I should have just stayed silent, swallowed my feelings, and let the wedding go by peacefully. At the same time, I can't shake the feeling that she has never really acknowledged the pain she caused me over the years, and that by speaking up, I was finally asserting that my feelings matter. Some friends say I did the right thing by being honest, but others say I should have waited until after the wedding. Now, months later, our relationship is at a standstill. I'm struggling with guilt, but I also struggle with the idea that I should apologize for being honest about my own experiences. I am caught between feeling justified in confronting years of hurt and feeling like a wedding was not the right moment. So, AITA for confronting my sister at her wedding over our long-standing issues, even though it caused a scene and upset many people. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he lost his job in his apartment. I, 33M, have a younger brother, Matt, 29M, who has always been a bit impulsive and financially reckless. Growing up, he was more of a free spirit, while I tended to be cautious and methodical. Over the years, I've helped him out when he was in a tight spot, loaned him money for emergencies, gave him advice on budgeting, and occasionally let him crash on my couch for a few days when he had nowhere else to go. I'm not wealthy by any means, but I've always tried to help where I can without jeopardizing my own stability. About a month ago, Matt lost his job. He had been working at a small retail store for the past year, and his manager suddenly let him go without much notice. Around the same time, he also got evicted from his apartment for falling behind on rent. He called me in a panic, saying he had nowhere to go and asking if he could move in with me until he got back on his feet. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the city where rent is high, and I was immediately hesitant. My finances are tight, and my apartment is already just big enough for me and my partner. I also have a demanding job that requires focus and long hours, and adding another adult into the mix, especially someone who has no income at the moment, would be stressful. I told him I understood his situation and that I wanted to help, but I couldn't have him move in permanently. I offered other ways to help. I could help him search for short-term rentals, contribute a small amount toward temporary accommodation, assist with job applications, and even lend him money for moving into a cheaper place. Matt insisted that these options wouldn't work and that living with me was the only solution. He kept emphasizing that it would be temporary and that as soon as he found a job, he would move out. When I refused to let him move in, he became very upset. He accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, saying that a real brother would help in a time of crisis. He also implied that I was prioritizing my comfort over family. I tried explaining that I was not abandoning him, but that having him live with me long-term would create financial and logistical problems for both of us. I reminded him that I had already helped him in ways that did not require him to move in, but he dismissed my efforts as insufficient. Over the next week, Matt started pressuring me more aggressively. He called multiple times a day, sometimes showing up unannounced at my apartment, claiming he had no other options. I tried setting boundaries politely, saying I would not let him move in, but I would continue helping in other ways. He reacted angrily, arguing that family support should be unconditional and that I was abandoning him when he needed me most. He even brought up past situations where I had stayed with him briefly during college, implying that I owed him the same now. I reminded him that my circumstances were different now and that the roles had reversed, but he said that didn't matter. I spoke to some family members about the situation. Opinions are split. Some agree that I am justified in setting boundaries, especially considering the practical implications of having a move in, while others think I should just sacrifice a little to help my brother during a rough patch. I feel guilty because I want to support him and maintain a close relationship, but I also worry about the strain that having him live with me would cause. Matt eventually found a friend willing to let him stay temporarily, but he continues to message me frequently, complaining about the stress of his situation and implying that I could have made it easier by letting him move in. I continue to offer advice, help with job applications, and financial support within my limits, but he seems unsatisfied with any solution that does not involve living with me. I am caught in a difficult position. I want to help my brother, but I also have responsibilities and limitations that I cannot ignore. Allowing him to move in would put stress on my finances, personal space, and daily routine. I have tried to communicate that my refusal is about practical concerns and not about refusing to support him emotionally or financially, but he interprets it as abandonment. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he lost his job and apartment, even though it has caused tension and hurt feelings. I feel like I'm trying to help in ways that are responsible and sustainable for both of us, but he and some family members view me as selfish and uncaring. I want to maintain our relationship and help him get back on his feet, but I also need to protect my own stability, and I am unsure how to balance these priorities without being seen as the villain. AITA for refusing to financially support my brother's decision to buy a luxury car instead of paying off his debts. I, 31M, have a younger brother, Jake, 28M, and growing up, We had very different approaches to money. I have always been very careful with finances, saving diligently, budgeting, and investing when I could. Jake, on the other hand, tends to live in the moment. He's intelligent and capable, but he's also impulsive and struggles with long-term planning. A few months ago, Jake called me to tell me some news. He had decided to buy a new luxury car, a fully loaded sports sedan that costs around $75,000. He was excited, saying that it was time to treat himself and that he had been working hard. At first, I congratulated him, trying to be supportive, but then he mentioned that he wanted me to co-sign the loan. He explained that his credit isn't great right now due to some late payments and other debts, and having me as a co-signer would allow him to get a better interest rate. I was shocked. I asked him about his current financial situation. He has about $30,000 in credit card debt, student loans totaling roughly $40,000, and a personal loan of $10,000. His monthly income barely covers his expenses, and he has no emergency savings. I reminded him that taking on a $75,000 car loan on top of all that would be financially dangerous, and that co-signing would put me at risk as well. He insisted that it's manageable and that I shouldn't worry. I tried to reason with him. I told him that his priority should be paying down existing debts and building a financial cushion, not buying a luxury car. I offered to help him create a realistic budget and savings plan, but he dismissed that, saying it was boring and that he deserved something nice after years of hard work. I explained that co-signing a loan for a car he probably can't afford would put me in a legally binding financial obligation. If he missed payments, I would be responsible, and it could ruin my credit. He said he understood but still wanted my help, claiming that I never support his dreams. I flat out refused to co-sign. I told him that I would never put my finances at risk for a car when he has multiple existing debts that are more urgent. He got extremely angry. He accused me of being selfish, controlling, and unsupportive. He said that I always play it safe and that I'm trying to dictate how he lives his life. He also brought up past times I've lent him smaller amounts or helped him with rent when he was short, implying that now I should do this too. After that conversation, things between us became tense. Jake started sending passive-aggressive texts about how I don't care about family and only think about myself. He also posted on social media complaining about unsupportive siblings and never having family who have your back. Some of our mutual friends reached out to me, asking if I would reconsider or if I was being too harsh. I explained my side, but I still feel like the villain in this story from his perspective. I feel strongly that co-signing this loan is financially irresponsible. Even if Jake promises to make every payment, life is unpredictable. He could lose his job, have unexpected expenses, or encounter other financial setbacks. I cannot put my own financial security at risk for a purchase that is not essential and that I believe is unwise. I've offered alternatives, such as helping him budget, look for a more affordable car, or even waiting until he has paid off some debts, but he refuses to consider any of these options. Tom, my partner, agrees with me completely. He says that co-signing a car loan for someone in Jake's situation is a huge risk and that Jake needs to take responsibility for his own financial decisions. However, my parents are caught in the middle. They think I'm being too strict and that I should help my brother out because he's family. They acknowledge his debts, but argue that I could at least make this easier for him. I also worry about the long-term implications for our relationship. Jake has always been impulsive, but I don't want to be estranged from him. At the same time, I don't want to jeopardize my own financial stability or feel pressured into risky decisions just because he's persistent. Since refusing, Jake has been cold and distant. He refuses to talk to me in person and only communicates through terse messages. Some mutual friends are now subtly pressuring me to soften and help him, which only makes me more frustrated. I want to maintain a relationship with him, but I also need to protect my own finances and not enable behavior I think is reckless. I keep thinking about my own principles around money and responsibility. Co-signing a luxury car loan for someone with significant existing debts feels like it violates everything I've worked toward. I know he might resent me for years, but I also know I could not live with myself if I agreed and something went wrong. So, AITA for refusing to co-sign my brother's $75,000 luxury car loan, even though he insists I'm being unsupportive. I feel like I'm acting out of concern for both of our financial well-being, but he sees it as a lack of love and family loyalty. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family rift. I never imagined I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am. My sister, Megan, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're 5 years apart, and while I've generally been the responsible sibling, she has always been more free-spirited. Our parents favored her outgoing personality, and I grew up feeling like I always had to overcompensate to get noticed. Despite that, I love her, and we've always managed to stay in touch. Megan has 2 children, Lily, who's 10, and Max, who's 6. She's a single mom and works part-time from home. I've visited her often over the years, and while her parenting style is unconventional, I usually try to stay out of it. That said, over the past few months, things have escalated to a point where I felt I couldn't stay silent. It started when I noticed that Lily and Max seemed exhausted and anxious every time I visited. They're usually bright, playful kids, but they appeared withdrawn, their schoolwork was slipping, and they had trouble expressing themselves. At first, I assumed it was just the normal stress of school or growing up, but one day Lily confided in me that she was afraid to tell Megan when she made mistakes. Max, being younger, mostly clammed up, but it was clear he was tense too. I decided to pay closer attention during my next visit. What I saw concerned me. Megan had started implementing this very strict, regimented behavior system for the kids that she found online. It involved a point system where they earned or lost points for everything from brushing their teeth to finishing homework. If they lost points, she'd impose harsh consequences, like taking away playtime or even privileges like meals she considered fun, like dessert or snacks. While she claimed this system was designed to teach responsibility, I noticed that the kids were living in constant fear of doing anything wrong. Even small, accidental mistakes triggered yelling or long lectures. The atmosphere at her house was tense and anxious, and I could see the impact on the children's emotional well-being. I tried subtle hints first. I suggested alternatives, like positive reinforcement without severe punishments, and recommended books and resources on child psychology that emphasize empathy and understanding. Megan would nod politely, but didn't change anything. When I asked Lily how she felt about it, she said she loved her mom, but was scared to make mistakes, and that scared me more than anything. I eventually decided I needed to speak directly with Megan. I told her I was worried about the children's mental health, that they seemed stressed and anxious, and that I feared the system was too harsh. I tried to frame it as concern, not criticism, but she immediately got defensive. She said I didn't understand, that she was doing what she thought was best, and accused me of judging her parenting. She insisted that the system had rules, boundaries, and fairness, and that the kids just needed to learn discipline. I didn't back down. I told her I wasn't there to undermine her authority, but that I was concerned about emotional harm. I cited examples from my visits. Lily not speaking up during dinner because she was worried about losing points, Max crying quietly after losing privileges, and how even fun activities felt stressful for them. I tried to remain calm, but I could tell she felt attacked. That's when it exploded. Megan yelled at me for overstepping, accused me of trying to take her kids away from her emotionally, and stormed out of the room. Our conversation ended with her saying that if I couldn't respect her parenting, I shouldn't come around anymore. After that, I noticed a subtle shift. The children seemed quieter, more withdrawn. Megan's behavior didn't change, but she started using the point system more aggressively. I tried to speak to the kids, but they were reluctant to open up, worried about being reported to their mom. I felt helpless. I reached out to our parents for guidance, but they told me it was Megan's house, her rules, and that I was being too controlling. This only made me feel more isolated. Things came to a head during a family gathering. The kids were present, and Megan had just imposed a strict new rule. No dessert unless every chore was completed perfectly. Lily accidentally dropped a cup of juice, and Megan scolded her for 5 minutes straight, taking away all her points for the day. I intervened gently, telling Lily it was okay to make mistakes, that she didn't need to fear her mom, and that everyone slips up sometimes. Megan saw this and lost it. She yelled at me in front of everyone, calling me a know-it-all and saying I had no right to undermine her authority. Family members tried to mediate, but it was messy. Afterward, Megan stopped speaking to me for several weeks, and the kids were caught in the middle. Lily cried almost every night about the tension, and Max became clingy, afraid of making any mistakes in front of adults. I feel torn. On one hand, I know I crossed a boundary by confronting her directly, especially in front of the kids. On the other hand, I genuinely fear for their mental and emotional well-being. I've tried to be supportive without controlling, but my concern was dismissed entirely, and I'm scared the longer I stay silent, the worse the situation will get. I've considered involving a child counselor or even authorities, but I also don't want to escalate things and risk alienating the kids further. I feel trapped between wanting to help and not wanting to destroy my relationship with my sister. I need perspective. Am I the asshole for confronting my sister about her parenting, even though it caused a huge rift and she says I overstepped? Or should I have stayed silent, letting the children deal with a system that I feel is emotionally harmful? I don't want to ruin the family dynamic, but I also don't want to look back and regret not speaking up when I had the chance. I'm asking for judgment from people who aren't emotionally involved because right now, I feel like I'm being torn in two, and I honestly don't know if I did the right thing. I want to protect the kids, but I also don't want to lose my sister forever. AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I, 28F, have always been close with my older sister, Mia, 32F. We grew up practically as twins, and even as adults, we have shared almost everything with each other. Jobs, apartment moves, heartbreaks, and personal milestones. So when Mia announced she was engaged, I was genuinely happy for her. I thought we were entering a new chapter of life together where I could help her plan and support her like I always have. However, from the moment she introduced me to her fiancé, Tom, 35M, I felt a sense of unease. I can't exactly pinpoint one moment, but there were subtle things. The way he talked over Mia during conversations, the little digs he would make about my life choices, and the constant, offhand comments about money and status. I tried to brush it off as my own overthinking, but it didn't sit right with me. As the wedding plans progressed, my concerns grew. Mia asked me to help with decorations and guest lists, and initially, I agreed. I wanted to be involved and maintain our close bond. But every time Tom was involved in decisions, he dismissed my suggestions outright and made passive-aggressive remarks about my lack of taste or simplistic ideas. It was frustrating, but I tried to maintain my composure for Mia's sake. The breaking point came during the bachelor/bachelorette party planning. I volunteered to help plan Mia's bachelorette party because she had a hectic work schedule. I had a vision for a low-key weekend getaway with close friends, focusing on relaxation and bonding. When I shared my ideas with Tom, he scoffed, calling it boring and childish. Mia seemed hesitant but didn't stand up for me, which I found very out of character for her. We ended up having a mix of last-minute changes that reflected more of Tom's preferences than Mia's, and the party turned out to be stressful and awkward instead of the fun bonding experience I had envisioned. The real issue escalated about 2 months before the wedding. I overheard a conversation between Tom and one of my sister's friends. He was mocking my job, my apartment, and even my past relationships. The thing that hurt most was hearing him make derogatory jokes about Mia, claiming she had settled for mediocrity by being with me so long, and now she's finally moving up by marrying him. I was shocked and confronted Mia, who initially denied any negativity from Tom, but eventually admitted he could be blunt at times. I told her I couldn't be around someone who spoke about her, and me, like that. I suggested we have a heart-to-heart with Tom, but Mia refused, saying, "It's my wedding, I won't let him be treated like an enemy in my house." I tried reasoning that standing by silently would only escalate things and cause resentment, but Mia said she didn't want to rock the boat and that I was overreacting. I felt trapped because I didn't want to alienate my sister, but I also couldn't ignore my discomfort. A month before the wedding, Mia sent me the final invitations. I stared at the envelope for hours before sending a text. I've thought about this a lot. I love you, but I can't be at your wedding if Tom is there. I can't celebrate with someone who disrespects you and me. I hope you understand. I expected a conversation or at least a dialogue, but instead she exploded. Her response was full of anger and disappointment. She accused me of being selfish, controlling, and judgmental. She said that by not attending, I was choosing Tom over her and questioned whether I ever truly cared about her happiness. Our parents also weighed in, saying I was overreacting and that Mia deserved to have her family there no matter what. My friends were divided. Some supported my decision, understanding that protecting my boundaries was valid, while others told me I was being dramatic and that I should suck it up for one day. I tried reaching out to Mia again, hoping to salvage the relationship before the wedding, but every attempt ended in her either hanging up or sending curt texts saying, "Your absence is your choice. Don't bother me." My parents invited me to attend pre-wedding events separately, but I declined, knowing it would be awkward and not genuine. Since then, tensions have been high. Mia is upset, my parents are disappointed, and mutual friends are trying not to take sides, but it's clear they're judging me for my decision. I feel isolated, but at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that standing up for myself is the right choice. I try to consider the long-term relationship with my sister, but every interaction with Tom felt like a personal attack, and I worry that pretending everything is fine will only lead to resentment and emotional exhaustion. I know some people might say weddings are about compromise, but for me, the compromise here would be sacrificing my mental health and sense of self-respect. I consider going to the wedding but staying at the back or leaving early, but I feel that would be disingenuous and possibly disrespectful to Mia if she knew my true feelings. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I can't stand her fiancé? Or am I justified in prioritizing my boundaries, even if it risks our relationship? The whole situation has left me questioning not only my relationship with Tom, but also with Mia, which is heartbreaking. I still love my sister dearly, and I want her to be happy, but I don't know if I can be a part of a celebration that feels toxic to me. I'm open to understanding if I'm being unreasonable here, because part of me fears that I might be overreacting, but another part insists that ignoring my instincts would be worse in the long run. AITA for refusing to let my in-laws move in with us after they lost their house. I, 31F, have been married to my husband, Jason, 33M, for 6 years. We have 2 children together, Emma, 5F, and Noah, 3M. Jason and I both work full-time, and we recently bought a 3-bedroom house that we managed to afford with careful budgeting. We are not wealthy, but we are stable and manage our finances carefully. A few weeks ago, Jason's parents, Karen, 60F, and Steve, 62M, lost their home due to foreclosure. They had been behind on their mortgage for years, but kept delaying any serious financial planning. They called Jason in a panic, saying they had nowhere to go and asking if they could move in with us temporarily until they figured something out. At first, I felt sympathy for them because I understand how stressful it must be to suddenly lose a home, but I immediately had concerns. Our house is 3 bedrooms and already feels small with our kids. Adding 2 adults into the mix, even temporarily, would drastically change our daily routine, privacy, and space. I told Jason that I was uncomfortable with the idea. I suggested alternatives, helping them find a short-term rental, contributing toward a temporary Airbnb, helping them search for government programs, or helping them contact family friends who might have available space. Jason told me that those options would not work for them, and he believed that the only reasonable solution was to have them move in with us. He said it would be temporary, just a few weeks, and that it was the right thing to do as a family. I explained that my concerns were not about not wanting to help, but about practicality. Our kids need routine, and having 2 extra adults in the house could disrupt their schedules. Our bedrooms and bathrooms are already tight, and I was worried about having enough space and privacy for our family. I also mentioned that living together with in-laws, even temporarily, can strain relationships and create tension, and I did not want to jeopardize our family dynamic. Jason got frustrated. He said that I was being selfish and that family should come first. He accused me of caring more about convenience than helping people in genuine need. He also implied that if I refused, it would be a reflection on my character and that I was turning my back on my in-laws during a crisis. I tried to remain calm and reiterated that I wanted to support them, just not by having them live with us. I offered to help financially, assist in apartment hunting, or even pay for temporary storage for their belongings, but he dismissed these solutions, insisting that moving in with us was the only viable plan. Over the next few days, tension escalated. Karen and Steve called multiple times a day, expressing stress and frustration, and subtly blaming me for not allowing them to move in. They described their situation in detail, emphasizing how dire it was, and I felt guilty. At the same time, their presence in the background of phone calls, with my kids sometimes in the room, was stressful. I started having anxiety about what it would be like if they actually moved in, considering how cramped our house is and how disruptive it could be to our kids' routine. I also tried talking to friends who have lived with in-laws. Many warned me about potential conflicts over space, household rules, finances, and parenting styles. They suggested that even temporary arrangements often stretch longer than expected, leading to tension and resentment. I shared this with Jason, hoping he would understand why I was hesitant, but he interpreted it as me trying to avoid responsibility. Family members began weighing in. Some relatives agreed with Jason, saying we should help family in need no matter what, and that refusing was cold and uncaring. Others privately told me that my concerns were valid, pointing out that living with in-laws can disrupt daily life and create long-term conflict. I feel torn because I want to support his parents, but I also need to protect my family's routine, space, and mental health. The situation has created significant strain in my marriage. Jason and I are constantly arguing about the issue, and I feel like he sees me as selfish, while I feel like he's not respecting my boundaries or considering the practical implications. I have tried repeatedly to propose compromise solutions that would help his parents without them moving in, but he refuses to accept them. I want to help Karen and Steve get back on their feet, but I also recognize that allowing them to live with us could create tension, disrupt our children's routines, and possibly damage our marriage. I have been clear that I am willing to help in ways that do not involve living arrangements, but they and Jason continue to pressure me. I feel guilty and anxious because I'm caught between supporting his parents and protecting my family's well-being. So, AITA for refusing to let my in-laws move in after they lost their house. Even though Jason and some family members view me as unsupportive, I want to help in ways that are sustainable and safe for everyone. But my decision is causing tension, guilt, and ongoing arguments in my marriage. I am unsure how to navigate helping them while also maintaining boundaries that protect my family and household. AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband stay in my house after a disastrous visit. I, 32F, live in a modest 3-bedroom apartment in a city I moved to for work. I've always prided myself on keeping my home a calm and tidy space, and I like hosting close friends occasionally, but am not comfortable with long-term stays from family or acquaintances. I have a sister, Maya, 35F, who has always been a bit more carefree and impulsive than I am. Maya is married to Eric, 36M, a man I've known for about 5 years. For context, Eric can be charming in social settings, but is extremely high maintenance and tends to push boundaries without thinking about the consequences. The story starts with Maya asking me last month if Eric could stay in my apartment for a few days while he was in town for work. She framed it as him being in the city for a conference and needing a place to crash, and that it would only be a couple of nights. I was hesitant because I had a packed work schedule and my apartment is small, but I didn't want to upset my sister, so I agreed. I explicitly said 2 nights max. I need my space, and I can't take on more than that. She assured me it would be fine. Eric arrived, and almost immediately, things went off the rails. First, he brought not only his suitcase, but also a large box of his work equipment and insisted on setting it up in the living room, even though I had told him the space was limited. He moved furniture around without asking and left cables and boxes sprawled across the floor. I asked him politely to keep the living room clear, and he brushed me off, saying he needed proper setup for his work. I tried to stay calm and reminded him we had agreed it would only be a couple of nights, but he laughed it off. The first night was tolerable, though stressful. The second day, he started cooking in my kitchen, but left a huge mess behind. Oil splatters on the counters, dirty dishes piled up, and crumbs everywhere. I told him multiple times that I expected him to clean up after himself, and he responded with, "Oh, I'll get to it later. Don't worry about it." Meanwhile, he was blasting music in the living room while I was on a Zoom meeting, and when I asked him to turn it down, he said he didn't realize I had work. By the end of the second night, I was beyond frustrated. I reminded Maya that he was supposed to leave after the second night, and she texted back that he had to extend his stay because a flight got canceled. That's when things escalated. Over the next few days, Eric acted like my apartment was his second home. He left laundry in my bathroom, borrowed food without asking, and made casual comments about how nice it would be if he could stay longer. I was getting increasingly anxious. I tried talking to Maya, explaining that I wasn't comfortable having Eric over indefinitely and that I needed my apartment to myself. She kept saying, "He's just stressed from work. You know how it is. Can't you just let him stay a bit longer?" I explained that a few days is one thing, but his behavior was disruptive and I had a right to my space. She became defensive, accusing me of being cold and unsisterly. The breaking point came when I found Eric had borrowed my vacuum cleaner to clean his room, then left it in the hallway with a cord wrapped around random furniture. That same evening, I was cooking and discovered he had left raw meat out on the counter, spoiling it, and I had to throw it away. I snapped and told him, in front of Maya over a video call, that he needed to leave immediately. Maya started yelling at me, saying I was overreacting and making a big deal out of nothing. Eric, surprisingly, didn't argue. He just looked annoyed and started packing, muttering under his breath about how rude I was. Once they left, I cleaned up for hours, emotionally drained. I haven't spoken much to Maya since then because every time I bring up boundaries or my discomfort, she brushes it off or frames me as unreasonable. A couple of our mutual friends have said I was justified in insisting that Eric leave, while others have told me I could have handled it more diplomatically to avoid family conflict. I feel like I did the only thing I could to preserve my mental health and my home environment, but now I'm questioning whether I overreacted or failed to manage the situation more gracefully. I also feel guilty for creating tension with my sister. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband stay in my house after what turned into a chaotic and disrespectful visit. AITA for refusing to take my mother-in-law's dog for a week while she goes on vacation, even though it conflicts with my work schedule. I, 35F, work as a marketing manager for a mid-sized company and have a fairly demanding job. My husband, Ben, 36M, and I live in a suburban area with our 2 kids, Lily, 8, and Max, 5. We also have a golden retriever, Daisy, who is well-behaved but energetic, and we like to maintain a routine for the kids and our dog. About a month ago, Ben's mother, Karen, 60F, called us asking for a favor. She and her husband were planning a week-long vacation overseas, and she wanted us to take care of her dog, Baxter, for the entire 7 days. Baxter is a large, high-energy dog who requires a lot of attention, walks, and outdoor time. My first reaction was concern because this period coincides with a critical week at work when I am leading a major campaign launch that demands late nights and early mornings. I explained this to Karen and Ben. I said I could help for a day or two, maybe overnight, but a full week would interfere with my job responsibilities and potentially jeopardize my project. Karen seemed to understand initially, saying she would try to make other arrangements. Then, she called a few days later saying that all her other options fell through and that she was counting on us. She implied that because we live nearby and have experience with dogs, it was natural that we would help. I tried to compromise. I suggested that she hire a temporary dog sitter, use a reputable dog boarding service, or see if a friend could help. She dismissed these options, saying she wanted Baxter to stay in a home environment because he gets anxious in kennels. She added that we could just rearrange our schedules for that week. I pointed out that rearranging my work schedule was not feasible because of deadlines and meetings. She said I was being unreasonable and selfish. Ben was caught in the middle. He understands my workload, but he also wanted to help his mother. He suggested that maybe I could take a half week and he would cover the remaining days. I explained that even splitting the week would still be disruptive, especially with school drop-offs, extracurricular activities, and maintaining Daisy's routine. He eventually admitted that he didn't see a way to make it work without me shouldering at least 4 of the 7 days. When I firmly said no to taking Baxter for the week, Karen became upset. She started making comments about how family should help each other, and she hinted that she had been counting on us because we're the only family close enough. She also mentioned past times I had babysat her grandkids or helped with errands, as if those implied an obligation to take the dog. After that, Karen began sending passive-aggressive texts about how she hoped we could step up as a family, and that Baxter would miss us if we weren't willing to help. Ben tried to mediate, saying he would help as much as possible, but Karen kept insisting that Baxter needed to be with us. The tension escalated, and now our relationship with her feels strained. I feel conflicted because I genuinely like Baxter, and I understand Karen's concern about leaving him in a kennel. However, taking care of a large, high-maintenance dog for a full week, while also managing my job and our own household responsibilities, would be extremely stressful and potentially harmful to my work performance. I've offered alternatives, but she refuses to consider them. Friends have given me mixed advice. Some say I should compromise to help my mother-in-law because it's just a week and it's family. Others agree with me that it's unreasonable to expect someone to take on full responsibility for a dog for a week during a critical work period, especially when alternatives exist. Ben is frustrated because he doesn't want to disappoint his mother, but he also doesn't want me to be overworked or stressed. He suggested we offer to take Baxter for 2 days and cover the rest with a professional sitter, but Karen dismissed that idea as not the same as family care. I also worry about the precedent this sets. If we agree to take Baxter for a full week now, she might expect similar favors in the future whenever she wants to travel. I want to be supportive and maintain a good relationship with my mother-in-law, but I also have to protect my own work and family life. So now I'm questioning whether I am really being selfish. I am willing to help in ways that are manageable and reasonable, but the expectation to take Baxter for a full week while juggling my job and my own family responsibilities seems extreme. I'm trying to balance kindness and practicality, but Karen frames my refusal as uncaring. AITA for refusing to take my mother-in-law's dog for a week when it conflicts with my professional obligations, even though she insists that family should help. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.